things don't stop just because we have an election going on. Apparently, a ceasefire that was supposed to take place between Armenia and Azerbaijan has now fallen apart, with both sides blaming the other. They have been in a conflict over an enclave called Nagorno-Karabakh, which actually is sort of an oil gateway, so it matters. Joining us on the line to discuss is Harry Khachatrian. He is a contributor at Daily Wire. He writes about the issues surrounding Azerbaijan and Armenia for us. I want him to explain the situation. Harry, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Ben.
So for people who don't follow the situation particularly closely, why don't you explain the conflict and where things stand right now?
Yeah, of course. So I think to best understand the conflict and to be able to discern the two belligerents here, it's important to look at the roots of what's happening and kind of go back in history. So really, a lot of this started back in the end of the Russian Empire in 1917 and the First World War. After the Bolshevik uprising, where the Tsar was ousted, Armenia and its neighbors in the Caucasus, they gained what was largely an ephemeral independence. This was about 1918. The Republic of Armenia was established, the Republic of Georgia, and Azerbaijan was created as a nation. And what some people may not know is the fact that prior to this, Azerbaijan just did not exist. It was a region of land that was in Russia, prior to which it was at some point in the Persian Empire. But as far as world history is concerned, Azerbaijan started in 1918. So fast forward about 3 years, and as I said, it was quite an ephemeral independence. We have the Sovietization of the Caucasus. And at this point, this entire region became part of the Soviet Union. So under Stalin, there was really a plan to divide what was Armenia. And there were regions which were, historically indigenously Armenian for thousands of years. So importantly, in this case, we want to discuss Nagorno-Karabakh and the other one, which is called Nakhichevan. So under Stalin, both of these became designated as what was called autonomous oblasts as part of Soviet Azerbaijan. And, for the most part, this is sort of was everything kind of stayed still until about 1988. And in 1988, the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh, they were largely wary because they were sort of, in addition to the context of the Armenian genocide, which was decades prior in 1915, they were seeing what was happening in the region of Nakhichevan, so unlike Nagorno-Karabakh, which was predominantly Armenian populated, as a result of many Turk conquests over the centuries, Nakhichevan was actually more of a minority Armenian region. And population-wise, in 1914, it was around 40% Armenian. By 1979, it was 1.4%. And today, there are no Armenians in this region. Not only are there no Armenian people, but also actual relics and connections to history have been entirely wiped out. And this was a piece I wrote at the Daily Wire last year, actually, which was detailing an entire campaign of cultural erasure and cultural genocide, where the Azerbaijani government oversaw the destruction of churches and various religious relics in an effort really to deny that Armenians ever even lived in this area. And so in the context of all of this, in 1988, pursuing all the correct legal facets and functions afforded to them, the people of Nagorno-Karabakh, they had a referendum in which they voted to gain their own independence. And it was passed, it went through the legislature there, and everything was entirely legitimate. However, being victims of history, unfortunately, what happened was, in 1988 was sort of the beginning of the end of the Soviet Empire. And this referendum effectively was really just lost through, a sea of bureaucracy that was crumbling at this point. And very shortly, in 1991, the USSR collapsed. So upon this collapse, immediately war broke out. As Azerbaijan and Armenia, they emerged as newly independent states. Azerbaijan attacked Nagorno-Karabakh in an effort to, push out the Armenians and gain this territory. So miraculously, as a result of defensive measures, Armenia was, despite not having an army, because they were, months prior to this, they were just a member of the Soviet Union. They didn't have really their own independent military. They were able to not only push back the Azerbaijanis, but they were able to actually gain territory. So this was really the last war that had ensued up until just right now, that, whatever broke out in September, things were, largely a ceasefire had been maintained. So, back to present day, Azerbaijan maintains claims of these several United Nations resolutions, which have been backed by every corrupt nation and dictator that sort of, try to establish ties between Azerbaijan and Nagorno-Karabakh. But as I explained, really throughout history, there has never been any connection between Azerbaijan and its territory. And not only that, but the Armenians of this region have used every legal facet available to them to pursue independence, and they have declared it. So as far as the sort of who is the aggressor, and as you were mentioning about the ceasefire, I think it's important to consider that the population right now of Nagorno-Karabakh, about 140,000 Armenians here. There's the nation of Armenia itself, about 2.9 million. They're up against, in this current war, Azerbaijan itself, which is about 10 million people, Turkey of 82 million people, and as confirmed by various reports and by the BBC in Syria itself, there's thousands of Syrian mercenaries who are currently being pushed through Turkey by the Turkish government to fight alongside Azerbaijan. There is the blockades that Turkey has set up to block humanitarian aid into Armenia. As far as the question of who is violating the ceasefires, I fail to see a possible motivation from Armenia or from Nagorno-Karabakh to break a ceasefire, because it's, they were the ones who were attacked in the first place. They're the ones who are defending themselves, who I guess have a specter of another genocide above them. And so the notion that Armenia would be violating a ceasefire to continue to fight against roughly 100 million people against them, I think is asinine. And moreover, I think what is also important to consider is the reports yesterday from the BBC, which was highlighting the war crimes that are actually going on here. The BBC report that said, Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, execution video prompts war crime probe, reports of footage of Azeri soldiers shooting unarmed Armenian soldiers with hands behind their backs. The Human Rights Watch that reported Azerbaijan has reportedly used widely banned cluster munitions in residential areas in Nagorno-Karabakh. There was, I think, just one more point that's important to highlight. I think there's been a lot of sort of Azerbaijani, you can call it propaganda or talking points that try to push this fact that, America should support a Western, a democratic Azerbaijan in this conflict, which I think is both highly pernicious and incorrect. So first of all, there's this false notion that Armenia is being propped up and supported by Iran and Russia. This is both illogical and incorrect. So first of all, Iran is a Shia Muslim majority country, and the notion that they would be backing a Christian country against another Shia Muslim country is inconceivable. And it's also just contrary to what is actually happening, because Iran is not supporting Armenia in any way in this conflict. And neither is Russia in any meaningful way. Although they try to broker ceasefires, there's no real transfer of weapons or technology.
Okay.
And
Harry Khachatrian, he is a contributor at Daily Wire who has written about Azerbaijan and Armenia. Really appreciate the time.